welcome to your June Masterclass, the overview of the clair sensory system that we hold within our energy stream and our physical form. So, for those of you who do not know what clairs are the different sensors that we hold within our energy stream that help us to connect to our psyche and also help us to do mediumship. So it can help us to connect to loved ones who have passed over as well. And we're going to go through these in depth during this session, and I'm going to be giving you some tips, hints, and also some techniques to try out in your own time to start strengthening a particular clair. And then from there on, within each masterclass, we're going to bring more techniques and tasks and hints and tips for all of the different clairs. Okay, so I believe that the clairs have built a huge basis and foundation for my psychism and my mediumship. And if you're anything like me, I was super hungry to understand and learn exactly how, why, when, all of these things that I was seeing, feeling, hearing, sensing were coming through. And I wanted to really understand also how spirit also were able to connect to my energies, because actually the more clairs that we have and the more clairs that we strengthen within our own energy system, the more we can connect psychically, but the more we can also connect to loved ones passed over. So therefore that can then bring forward so much more of a beneficial life for yourself. But also if you are also wanting to work within the industry or already are working within the spiritual industry, it will also strengthen your techniques and your messages that you give to your sitters as a reader, and will also help with your reputation of being a truthful reader that can bring forward great significance and evidence, because that is what's important when connecting to spirit as a reader. But it's also important if you're not a reader and you're just doing this for your own spiritual journey. It's also important to have your clairs strengthened, because it will help with your intuition, and it will also help with, helping your family or just listening to your future and what's to come, giving you messages, warnings, signals, all of this type of thing. So we're going to go into this now shortly, but I just wanted to just do a quick recap of the difference between psychism and mediumship, okay? Because some of you will be here more because you're wanting to focus on your psychism. Some of you will be here because you're more interested in your mediumship, connecting to loved ones. So your psychism is how you connect to someone's energy. So this would usually be someone who is still alive, and how you would connect to their energy, or how you would use your energy to connect to your intuition, say. That is psychism. So for instance, if you're going for a reading, you might choose to have a psychic reading, and then the reader would then give you guidance on your past, your present, or even a future forecast of what's to come for you. Okay, so psychism can include predictions and precognitions and all types of things like that. Okay, and mediumship is the ability to connect to spirit. Okay, so you may be able to connect to your loved ones who have passed over that you're aware of, or that you knew in this lifetime. You may also be able to connect to ancestors within your family line who you didn't meet, but you can start connecting to them. Also, mediumship is connecting to spirit. Okay, so this would be loved ones who are linked to someone else, but who you have no attachment to. But it will also be spirit who are stuck within buildings, locations, land, objects. Okay, so any type of spirit connection. Okay, this can also include spirit of the light, but also spirit of a darker sense as well, because there is lots of things knocking about sometimes. So actually, the more you can connect with your mediumship and strengthen your mediumship, you will be able to understand more so who the spirit is, what they're doing, what they want, what they maybe need, what their messages are, if it's for you, if it's for family, if it's for a friend, or if it's just actually some random spirit in a building that you've just walked into. So the more you can actually start understanding your mediumship, it will help you a lot with your empathy and your clairsensory as well. Not just if you're wanting to be a reader, but if you are wanting to be a reader, of course, this is really going to benefit you. But the reason why I wanted to just cap over the difference between psychism and mediumship is because a lot of people will either be doing one or the other more strongly, and they may not even realize, and they may be thinking that they're just psychic but not even realizing that they're actually connecting to spirit. So one, I say, well, who wouldn't want to learn how to connect to spirit, because it's truly is such an amazing thing to do. But two, when you actually start getting and knowing the difference between psychism and mediumship, actually you can really come through tenfold with strengthening your skill set. So another thing that sometimes people do is they will be using both. And again, it's really interesting, but also very, very beneficial to understand exactly when your psychism is kicking in and when your mediumship is kicking in. So for instance, if you are wanting to be a reader, you may be really interested in the mediumship and focusing a lot on mediumship, but actually you may have someone come who actually doesn't really know anyone who's passed over, and maybe they've got no interest in connecting to someone who's passed over. So if you're not detecting that someone is needing more of a psychic reading, but you do have your psychism, but you're wording it as if it's mediumship, of course you may be able to be receiving, or you may be aware of spirit for this person, but if they're not interested or not aware of this person, then they're going to probably go away feeling a little bit disappointed. So it's important for us as psychic beings to really assess the energy that we feel of what others need, or what it is that we need in that moment and what we need to hear. Okay, so this is why it's really important to understand when psychism is working, when mediumship is kicking in, and how. So this class, this masterclass, is going to now start focusing on the clairs in a lot more detail, but I just wanted to go through the overcap of the difference between psychism and mediumship. You will hear me go on about it a lot through different classes. Repetition is key within spiritually training and spiritually developing. Okay, so I know that it will get into your head over the course of the coming months. I'm just going to pop on now about the clairs. So all of the clairs are the information, the overview of all of the information that you will be able to find this written content within the membership and within the Facebook group as well. Okay, so if you need a written version of it, please do feel free to look over that and keep looking over it as much as you want, because the clairs are a very big topic. I could go on and on and on about the clairs. So just a quick overview now of each different clair. So there is actually 8 different clairs. A lot of people think, oh, there's only 4 or there's only 5 that they're aware of, but there is actually 8 altogether that we commonly use. Some clairs are more commonly used than other clairs, so we will all have certain clairs that maybe we feel like we don't have. If you hear people talking and through this course, you may actually feel like, oh, I don't get that. But hopefully my goal is to help you to actually realize that you do get that through the particular techniques that I've created or that I teach, to bring out and draw out your awareness of these clairs. And then what I would like you guys to do is to continue practicing. So whether you practice on people, practice on photos, practice on objects, or just practice these same techniques over and over, it will strengthen your psychism and your mediumship. The clairs are also amazing because we can bring them into our day-to-day practical lives as well as our spiritual lives as well. Okay, so even though it's a spiritual thing, they really, really help with our practical day-to-day lives. So if we focus now for a moment on clairvoyance. Clairvoyance is a very common used word. You'll hear a lot of people saying, oh, I'm going to see such and such clairvoyance tonight on the stage doing platform. So a lot of psychics or mediums will call themselves a clairvoyant because the word has been commonly used and widely used. What the problem is I find that a lot of my students, when they come through my door, they come through the online courses, is they won't actually understand the true meaning of clairvoyance. They'll just think it's a psychic or someone who knows stuff. But actually, the real meaning of clairvoyance is actually clear seeing, okay? One's ability to clearly see something which is not of their own, or something, if it is of their own, of their future, okay? So clairvoyance, clear seeing, can be used psychically and it can be used within mediumship. So there are two forms of clairvoyance. Can you guess what they are? So the two forms of clairvoyance, how we typically use clairvoyance, will be, the first one will be internal clear seeing, okay? And the second one will be external clear seeing. So you may already be starting to get an idea, or you may already know and be quite aware of clairvoyance. So internally clear seeing will be things like inside your mind, dreams, visions during meditations, visuals, something like memories being played out, a still of like a photo you could be seeing. You could be seeing images, symbols, colours, patterns. You could even see numbers. Whatever it is, it's all about the seeing internally within your mind. So you will start to see stuff that is not of your own. So if you start to see stuff, for instance, that's not of your own, this is an indication that mediumship is kicking in here, okay? You have to, obviously, which I'm going to teach you through the different classes, but you will have to start getting the links and start understanding how all of your different clairs ignite, so you can start to understand, is this spirit connecting with me and showing me these visuals? Or is this actually me picking up on something to do with my future, or something to do with someone else's life that has been and gone, or something to do with someone else's future? Okay, so when you start to understand how these clairs start coming in, I need to go through every single one for you to start being able to understand how they ignite. Okay, so hopefully you find this interesting. So other ways of clear seeing can be things like deja vu, premonitions, predictions, but within the mind. Okay, so anything internally visual is the internal clear seeing clairvoyance. So now let's just quickly move on to clear seeing externally. So this, you've probably guessed already, is everything outside of your mind, okay? So things like you could see maybe spirit walking through the room. You could maybe see like energy moving, orbs. You could maybe see auras just by looking at people or plants or animals without your eyes shut. You could also see things moving or movement of some sort. Anything that is moving externally outside of your mind with your eyes open will be coming under clear seeing externally. Of course, things like cars, actual physical beings moving around, that will not be the external clear seeing. It is anything that seems unknown to you, strange to you, which has a different type of energy. Okay, anything spiritual will be the clear seeing externally. So another way of which we will work on will be training our external clairvoyance to be able to see stuff front on. Now, some people, it depends on your lifestyle, depends on your culture, depends on how open you are, how you protect yourself, what you want, what your soul purpose is, what spiritual journey you're on will depend on what clairs ignite more for you, but it doesn't mean that you can't strengthen each different clair, okay? So some of you may already be seeing front on things walking around, or faces or things like that externally out of your body. And this is something that I had from very early on, and I had it all throughout my life. I did shut it down quite a bit because at one stage it scared me a lot and it drained me a lot as well. But actually, when I got the right training and I learned how to protect myself, and I actually realized actually a lot of this isn't harmful, actually I started to open it up again so I could see front on again. But the most common form of clear seeing externally will be in your peripheral vision, okay? So to the side, sort of like half your blind spots. You know, you've always heard people say, or even yourself has said, oh, I swear someone was just stood there then, or someone just walked past. And then people say, oh, really? Oh, you're seeing things. But actually, no, it's because there probably was someone stood right there or walking past. And actually, the reason why is because this area here, our peripheral vision, has not been trained. So when we're young, we're very open to source, and we grow up, as I said, depending on whatever life we've chosen to have or chosen to take, depending on what happens with us and those who were around, we slowly start to sort of build up an immune system to it, or shut ourselves down. And this normally happens around puberty time for children, because the hormones start changing and sort of life starts seeming to get a bit difficult, because when we're young, we have these things that seem more important get in the way. So some people remain more open than others, and those will be the ones that do, experience a lot more psychic stuff. But some people shut right down, okay? So you have to sort of go on a bit of a journey yourself to understand where you've been, what you've done, who you are, what you feel's coming for you. Okay, and this happens with the little trickles that come into your mind of what you feel pulled to do, which is probably another reason why you're here watching this video now, is because you're wanting to understand part of your spiritual journey, and you listen to the pull of you was drawn to learn with this particular school. So going back to the clear seeing externally with the peripheral vision, sorry, I got that wrong then, I can never pronounce that word, with the peripheral vision, as I said, it's an untrained open area here. But as we've grown up, we've learned to see shape and form and pattern within the front of us. So that is why a lot of us won't see spirit bang on in front of us. Some of us do, and actually we can open it up and we can have that come in strongly. It's just depending on whether that's for you or whether you want it. So the whole point of training your clear seeing external would be to actually create this peripheral vision to come round so you can see all of it, so you can actually see the spirit, not just for a split second, or not just, oh, in the corner of my eye. Okay, and that again will have a lot of benefits, because it will really help you to understand what's going on spiritually and what you can do to help these spirits, or what you can do to help someone who is looking or wanting a message from these spirits. Okay, so that one's a little bit more of a tricky one, because sometimes that clear seeing external can scare people. So you need to make sure that you're putting in the right protection and grounding if you're going to start asking for that particular sense to get stronger. But obviously, this is what we're going to learn. So the second type of clair that I wanted to just recap with you, if you don't know already, but as I said, there are masterclasses on every single clair. Okay, so for those of you who have been taught by me before, you will know that I go on about the clairs a lot, because I do believe they are so important to know inside out, and also to know in depth how they work for us as an individual to help with our psychism and our spiritual paths. So the second one I wanted to discuss with you is clairaudience. So for some of you, you may already know what that means, but when I do tests with my students, sometimes they're like, oh, I'm not sure. But the word there to look for is audience, okay? Audio. Okay, so a lot of people get it mixed up and think audience, so they think, oh, someone who stands there and says stuff in front of an audience. No, it's actually audio. So audio would be like, playing music, all of that type of thing where you hear. So clairaudience simply means clear hearing, your clear hearing sense. So again, like clairvoyance, there is two typical types of clear hearing. So one is internally clear hearing, and the second again is externally clear hearing. So again, you're probably already getting an idea, or you already know that you have it. For those of you who don't, the things that would be coming into your mind, clear hearing internally, would be things like voices in your head. Yes, people say, oh, I'm crazy, they're crazy. No, actually, the voices in your head doesn't mean that you're crazy. It just simply means that someone's trying to communicate with you. Don't you just wish that they knew about this so long ago? Because actually, I think people wouldn't have got locked up in mental homes if people were actually aware of this particular clairsensory. So we have the clear hearing internally, which would be things like voices in our head, music playing in our head, particular songs, or even like words. We may even hear tones of voices, accents of voices, things like that. So then you'll be able to tell it's a man, it's a woman, it's a child, it's an older person, it's someone foreign, it's someone from your country, but a different area because of their accent. So it's really interesting and it's really fun when we do the clairaudience techniques. That's really fun because what happens is, yes, we will have things in our mind, but because we're so visual, and this is why the clairvoyance, the clear seeing, is such a common clair. But because we're so visual, we tend to not listen to what is in our mind. And because we're so busy throughout our day, and even in our minds, we're so busy, even when we're relaxing, again, we're blocking out listening to what's coming into our mind. So another thing that gets a little bit more tricky with the clear hearing is the fact that we will often hear words in our own voice come into our mind. But the trick is we need to become aware of what we're hearing in our own mind, in our own words, in our own voice, because it will actually not sound like what we would say. Does this make sense? So that is another trick, and this is where the clear hearing internally can get quite confusing for people, because often we will then put the doubt in, or the confidence will lower because we're thinking, oh, I'm just making this up because I'm just hearing that in my own thoughts, in my own words. Does that make sense to you? But actually, quite often I've been connecting to spirit, and I have actually been hearing them talking to me, but I haven't heard their accent or their tone. And I've been able to detect that it's a spirit because of some of my other clairs, or my visuals have been showing me it's a man. But actually, the way I'm hearing him talking is actually in my own voice. So this can get very confusing for people. So we have some techniques coming up over the coming time to focus on that, and it's really interesting. And when you get that one, it really does shift you and get you forward. Okay, so the external clear hearing now would be things like outside, like things like when you feel like someone's shouted at you but there's no one else in the room, and it's not a voice of your partners or a family members. Again, hearing music or sounds outside of your head, but no one else can hear them. Okay, so it's, and again, there's nothing playing on the radio, or there's nothing going on. Again, external clear hearing could also include things like the radio suddenly turning on, sudden knocks, sudden tappings, sudden external things that don't seem of the norm, or don't normally happen, or just suddenly happen, and it feels like there's like this energy around that wasn't there before. Okay, Other types of clear hearing externally will also be something called the hum or the buzz. So if you Google it, it actually comes up with this. So the hum will be like a slow, like humming noise within your ear, and it will be a constant buzzing or humming noise. So it's not tinnitus. It's slower than how tinnitus works, and it's like lighter. Okay, but you will be able to constantly hear it, and it may be in both ears or it may be in just one or the other ear. Okay, so another form of it's a mix of internal hearing and external hearing is tinnitus. So this will be more of like a ringing sound in your ear, and it will come in and it will almost like, you know, when you put your head under the water and your ear gets a bit blocked, it will create that funny sound, and then it will almost be like a numbing sort of feeling, and then it will be like ring, and it will go for however long it's going to go. Some people have it for long periods of time, some people just have it every now and then. Now there is scientific explanations and health explanations about tinnitus. So some people think it's like a health issue or something to do with the hearing, but actually spiritually, after like research, and also I know this to be true because I also receive it, it is also known to be spiritual connection or loved ones connecting. So that would be a form of mediumship that is actually coming through with your external clear hearing. Okay, so the reason why it's a mixture of internal and external is because it starts internally, but then it almost feels like it's coming out externally. Okay. So here's a good little bit of information for you with regards to the tinnitus. So I've been psychic for my whole life, but my first memories was when I was 4 years old. But actually I'm 33 now, and my grandmother passed 2 years ago, so when I was 31. And with regards to my grandmother, obviously I was already working within the spiritual industry before my grandmother passed. But actually after my grandmother passed, I started to get tinnitus in the left ear, not the right, only the left. But you can actually receive tinnitus in both ears at the same time, or maybe one ear more often than others. Maybe it switches around. But this is what helps. So when you can start detecting this is what helps you to know who's connecting with you. So about 6 months after my grandmother passed, I started to get tinnitus, and I'd already obviously connected with her a lot over that 6 months of her passing. Now I get it still, and as I said, she's been gone 2 years now. I still get tinnitus, and when I get tinnitus, it's always on my left side ear, never my right. Now, the left side of the body represents the past of you. It also represents the feminine of your energy, but it can also represent females, okay? Females within your life, alive or passed over. The right-hand side of your body represents your masculine side of your energy. It also represents your future of yourself, and it also represents males in your life or males passed over in your life. Okay, so when I get this tinnitus, it's always in my left ear. So that goes to show that the left is all about the female. My grandmother is a female, and she is from my past. It doesn't mean she's not supporting me with my future, of course, but she always rings in on my left ear. So this is to show me that this is her. So if there was a male in one's life, they would probably, if they were going to use their external clear hearing of the tinnitus, they would probably come through on the right hand side. So I notice she comes through whenever I'm doubting something in my life, or whenever I'm sort of like thinking, what could I do to sort of like add to my business or something like that, because I've created a bond with her now on the other side, and she has helped me create so much more towards my business. She's been a very big champion of mine when she was alive to do with my spirituality, but also now she connects with me and she guides me with my spiritual business. So I know that it's her because I always backtrack and I think, right, what was I just thinking in my mind when I just got that tinnitus? And I will think, right, well, I was doubting this part of my life or this part of what I want to do next. And then I'll sit and I'll be like, right, okay, Grandma, you're here. What would you like to say to me? And then I will use the rest of my class to understand what it is she's saying and to also connect with her and speak back to her. So for any of you who have this tinnitus, please do be aware that this is a very strong spiritual sense, and this is a very clear indication that there is a loved one waiting to chat with you or trying to give you a message there and then. So next time you get it, just track back and see what you were thinking about, and you will start to be able to understand, right, well, I was doubting this, so maybe they're actually coming to give me a bit of reassurance or coming to give me a message. And then, of course, it would then be about listening or watching or feeling what you get next, and that may then indicate what the message is. But of course, I'm here to help you with these techniques to strengthen, to get these links so you can fully understand the connections and the messages from your loved ones. Okay, so this leads us on to the third clairsensory that I'd like to discuss with you. This is called claircognizance. So claircognizance means clear knowing. So this is the knowing clair. So have you ever had times where you've just known that something is going to happen, or that someone's going to ring, or that a particular situation is going to occur or be okay? And you've got that strong knowing, and you find yourself saying, I just don't know how, but I just know it's going to happen, and I just know I got to do that. Or I don't know why, but I just knew that was going to happen, and it did. This is the claircognizance, clear knowing, working, and we've all had this. So this is quite a common clair, because we all can relate to that feeling of I just knew that was going to happen. But actually it doesn't happen as often as the clear seeing clair does. And the reason why is because along our spiritual journey, we have to upgrade, we have to evolve, and we have to develop. It's an ever developing journey. It's an ever evolving journey. So when we have these strong senses of these clear knowing, what will happen is if we got them all the time, we would get used to that. So then it's almost like maybe we wouldn't notice it anymore. So what I find with a lot of my students and also myself is when this clear knowing comes in and we trust it and we just know to trust it, it can then bring such a significant answer, message, solution, situation for oneself or for someone else who you're working with or reading for. And because it's such a strong significance, it can be life transforming for people. So the claircognizance tends to happen more so when you're least expecting it, because then you will notice it more. Okay, it doesn't mean that you can't train yourself upon it, but it just means that it's not as common as the visuals. Okay. Some of us will hold claircognizance more so than others, but I know that all of you watching would have experienced that I just know that was going to happen feeling at some stage in your life. So you may find that when you start spiritually developing more so, that you will actually start to get more clear knowing feelings coming in, okay? And that's brilliant, because that just shows that you're trusting in your intuition more. But again, as I said, if you had it all the time, it would start to run along a line and you wouldn't notice. So then you wouldn't maybe necessarily feel yourself upgrading. Whereas when you get that claircognizance and then it's such a significance and you're like, wow, blown away by it, actually, bosh, you step up a level, okay? And then you start working towards that level again. Okay, we'll talk more about sort of the upgrading and the feeling and the significances of upgrading later on in another video. So the next clair is clairsentient. So a lot of people get clairsentient mixed up with clairempathy. So I'll discuss clairempathy straight after clairsentient, so it's easier for you to understand. But what clairsentient simply means is clear sensing. So it is not clair scent either, because a lot of people also get mixed up with the scent because of the word. So clairsentient is clear sensing. Okay, sensing that there is something around you, sensing that you feel that there's going to be a situation occur, sensing that someone is feeling upset. Okay, it is that strong sense. It's not the clear knowing, it's a strong sense. So you may, as I explained with the claircognizance, that's a clear knowing, it's in here, it's in here. Whereas clairsensing is all over. So you may sense it from your gut, you may sense it from your heart, you may sense it from your throat, but you can't feel it. You can't physically feel clairsentient. It is a sense. So I'm going to just move on to clair empathy because they're very interlinked, and this is where people get very confused. And it's really important to know the difference because, again, it can really benefit you going forward with your spiritual path. So clair empathy, there are two types of clair empathy, and the first type would be your clear emotions. The second type would be clear physical empathy. So if we focus on the clear emotions for a moment, this will be feeling, actually emotionally feeling someone's heartache, or emotionally feeling that you're going to burst out crying, or suddenly feeling really excited and happy, feeling anxiety, or feeling really down or drained or depressed, or whatever emotions you have or one has, you can have the potential to feel that. Okay, so it would be things like when you're with someone, they may be talking and they may be saying that they're okay, but you may be just feeling like your eyes are tearing up, and it's because actually deep down that person is just really lost, or they're just feeling really sad in life. So a lot of people get this mixed up because they will think because they love their family or they love their friend who they're talking to, and they really care about them, that actually they're starting to well up because they just love their friend and they care about them, which, yes, of course, is lovely. But actually, this is actually a clear example of clear empathy emotions. You are actually empathing in with that person at that time, feeling what they're feeling their emotions. Okay? So it's important to be aware of that, because when we're with someone and we've been with that person and we're feeling that for them, we go back home and we may still carry it home with us within our energy. And actually, it wasn't ours, it wasn't our energy. Now, this can happen, and it's a transfer of energy, and this can happen very often. And this is where people start to get very drained, and they don't realize that they're an empath, or that they may know they're an empath, but they're not actually realizing just how much of an empath they truly are. Now, the reason why I bring this up next to the clairsentient is because there is a very clear difference between the two. One will be that actually feeling that emotion like you're going to burst out crying yourself, but it's not yours. And this clairsentient will be sensing that someone's going to cry, or sensing that someone's really sad, but not feeling like you're going to burst out crying yourself. So what we find is sometimes there's been researches on people who have got different sort of learning abilities and things like that. And there was actually research that they did on people who were autistic. And actually, when they did the spiritual clair research, they actually found out that a lot of autistic people, or people who have certain levels of autism, were more clairsentient than clair empathy emotional. And this is because of how certain way how their brain worked or whatnot. But it was actually quite interesting, because what will happen is sometimes people say, I sense that you're really sad right now, but they don't hold the empathy within them. So it can sometimes come across like, oh, are you being a bit rude to me? Yeah, I am sad. Like, why aren't you, like, being nicer? But actually, it doesn't mean that the clairsentient isn't being nice. They're actually still letting you know that they're aware that something's going on. It's just because they don't hold as much empathy as what someone who is very much more clair emotional empathy. Because if you're feeling, you could be like, oh gosh, I really, really feel like you're really upset right now. I'm so sorry that you feel like this. And actually that person can then be like, oh gosh, yeah, I do. I'm so glad that you understand how I feel. So it's important to know the difference, very much so, between the clairsentient and the clair empathy emotional, because actually both clairs are amazing, but you need to know which one you are, because then when you know, you will be able to help more so. And how lovely is that to let people know and for them to really get that you understand how they feel in that very moment. So another thing about clair empathy emotional for a moment is you will be able to pick up, as an empath, you will be able to pick up on those who are alive, those who have passed over, who are in your family, but also spirit that is stuck who you don't know. You will also empath in with them, okay? Because spirit of any sort still hold these memories of emotions within the blueprint of their spirit body. Okay, so we will do a session on that coming up, and that's very interesting. So you can also empath in with animals who have passed over, but also animals who are still alive. You will also be able to feel their emotions as well. And anyone who is animal lovers or who feels more drawn to animals, they would probably usually be an empath. So the second one that I mentioned was clair empathy, physical. Okay, so again, you probably know what this is now. This is physically feeling someone else's pain. Okay, so again, this can be someone who is alive, it could be an animal, or it could be a loved one passed over, or spirit stuck. Okay, or animal passed over. So again, it's important to detect what your body's doing and what your other clairs are doing to be able to tell whether you're picking up on someone who is alive's physical pain or spirit's physical pain. Okay, because again, as I said, spirit hold the memory of the physical pain within their spirit body. It doesn't mean that they're still in pain. They are at peace. They are free because they don't have their physical anymore, but they hold the memory of it so they can come back and transfer it upon you. So it is really important to be aware of the physical one, because unfortunately, the physical one, there are lots of different types of physical pains or physical sensations, as it's not always pain. There can be sensations like a funny, like itchy, scratchy feeling. I've had sensations where I felt like the skin was really crusty and, really like sort of wrinkly and crusty. Like that's a strange sensation, but it didn't hurt me. But then I've had pains come over me that have really hurt me or shocked me as well. So this is really a key one, because it's very important to be aware of our own energy and to understand exactly what is going on with our own energy and our own health. Because actually, if we suddenly have the sensation of pangs in our heart and we're not detecting that it is a loved one or someone else's loved one who had a heart attack putting that upon us, we can start going into a bit of a scared state of mind and think, oh my gosh, I've got heart issues, or oh my gosh, I've got to get checked up. So this is something that used to happen to me a long time ago. And I used to go to the doctors very often. So I was already spiritual and I was already doing a lot of spiritual stuff, but I wasn't detecting at this time that it was spirit that was doing this to me. So I would constantly go to the doctors and I would constantly ask for checkups because I had so much physical pain going on within my body. And actually, because I was never being able to detect it or release, I was never able to release it. So I was then just holding this on, because the spirits were just like, oh, she's got her light on, she's really psychic, I'm trying to talk to her, but I need to give her stuff so she can get who I am. And I wasn't listening correctly. So therefore I wasn't able to remove it. And I was then getting it confused, thinking that it was my body having all sorts of issues. So then when I would get my test back, everything would come back clear, completely nothing wrong with you, Ellie. So then I'd just be like, what on earth is going on? This is really freaking me out, to the point where the doctors started to suggest that I had mental health issues, and they started to suggest that I was a hypochondriac, someone who always thought that there was something wrong, but it was all in my mind. Now, I was not agreeing with that. I did not believe that I was a hypochondriac. I now know that I wasn't. But this is then what sort of started to lead me into my next step of my journey, where I got training, and this lovely lady who was an amazing medium actually started to help me to understand that this isn't mine. So some of you may already be aware to check if this feeling is yours or not, and if so, that's great. But some of you may be at the stage where you check but you still don't know how to release it, and we will teach you that along the coming months. But it is really, really important, because as a physical empath, we can walk out to the shop and we could just come home and just feel really sick. And we'll start to think, oh God, why do I feel so sick? Oh God, I got a headache. Oh, I need to lie down. And actually, it's not even yours. So actually, when you know it's yours and you know the tricks to get rid of it, it can go within seconds. But also, it can also then help you to understand exactly who is there and what they need at that time, and if you are the right person to help this spirit or this person. So again, the benefits of the physical is if you're talking to someone who's actually alive and you're picking up on, so like their knee, you can actually say, oh gosh, my knee is really hurting. Have you hurt your knee recently? And then they turn around and they say, oh my gosh, like I broke it like 2 years ago and it's just really flaring up. It's really sore in the winter. So I think you must be feeling that. But again, it's just in that moment helping that person to understand that you really feel that pain in their knee. But also, again, if you are a reader and you're working within the industry, again, it's bringing more significance to that person, so they know that you are actually being truthful and you are actually saying what is coming through, and they can trust then your further messages that come through because it's seen as significant. Another little thing that can come into the clair empathy clair. So I love this clair because it's a very big one, and it's a, you know, there's so many different things that can come into the clair empathy. But another thing that's interesting that can come in is also a person or like a reader or a medium can take on the traits, the personality traits of a loved one coming through. So for instance, you can get things like their accents coming through, or if they swore a lot, something like that. And actually, being an empath, they will be empathing in with how that person was. So obviously you can pick up on personalities and traits and things like that anyway when you listen with the clair, but actually you will be able to really feel in your head like what it was like for that person. So again, I mentioned about autistic people. So you could have someone come through, you could have a loved one come through in spirit who was autistic, or who had possibly ADHD, or who possibly had some sort of disability or something like that, and you can actually feel that within yourself. You can feel it within your mind. So I did a reading once for a man, and it was very, very interesting because when I did this reading, I felt like I was feeling and seeing and hearing all this stuff, and I was portraying the messages. But then suddenly it was like I saw this visual, but then I felt and I knew that this was how his mind worked, and I actually started to act like a bit like frantic and a bit like because what I was seeing all these like piles of paper like piling up all around me, and I was literally the way I was explaining it is I was like, and then you go here and then you go there and then you're there and there, and to me, because that's not how my mind is, I'm very sort of calm and I do one thing at a time and I'm very organized with that type of thing. It felt like really sort of like uncomfortable within my mind. But then when I actually just allowed it, I was actually able to really explain a situation of how he works. And I was able to get that actually he was very OCD. It was a mess everywhere, all over his desk. And there was piles of this paper, but that actually that was how he worked, and he knew exactly where every single thing he needed was, even though to me it looked like an absolute mess. So he started laughing then, because actually he was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly how it is for me. That's exactly what's going on, and I know exactly where everything is. And also what I felt in my head. So yes, I am an intelligent woman, but I know I've got other attributes that work more strongly for me rather than my, intelligence, if so say. But with him, I knew that he was such an intelligent man, almost like he should be like, an inventor of some sort, that type of intelligence. And I actually felt that in my mind. So it's very interesting with that clair empathy as well, because these traits can come in strongly. So again, that's one example. There could be more sort of negative traits that you might experience, or more positive traits that you might experience. It's very, very interesting. Okay, so the next one I'd like to discuss with you is clairalience, okay? So this is actually the ability of clear smelling, okay? So we will smell this. It is more of an external sense, okay? So we will smell things like a lovely lavender or floral perfume, or we might get the scent of like tobacco or like cigar smoke coming through. We may get like nice smells or nasty smells, and we will get it when we're in a reading situation, where we're doing a reading for someone, or where we're just sort of like within our own day to day. We might get these scents come in, or we may even get these scents come in when you go into a particular room, which is like, depending on whatever the scent that you're getting, it could indicate that actually there's spirit still in that room, or energy of spirit still stuck in that room. So the scent is a lovely one, because you hear a lot of people say, oh yeah, when my grandmother came through, I always get the smell of roses because she loved her rose garden. So that will in turn help you to think about your grandmother. So those of you who maybe don't think you're that psychic, you may get that smell. And the whole point is because they are letting you know that they are there. They want you to think about them, because that's the clue. You think about them, and then it will then ignite other clairs to start coming in. So the clear smelling isn't as common as, say, like the clairvoyance clair, but when it does come in, it kickstarts and ignites the other clairs to start coming in. That's why it's such a good clair. So next time you smell lovely roses, or that tobacco smoke, or whatever it is that makes you think of your grandparents or your loved one, don't just stop there. Actually say, right, you're here with me right now, aren't you? Why are you here? Are you here to give me a message, or are you just letting yourself are you just letting me know that you're visiting? So again, this is why the clear smelling can be very good, because it can enable you to then stop and then check out what the rest of your clairs are doing, and then you might actually be able to get a little bit of a message. An interesting example, it's not a very nice one, but it just goes to show that we can have nasty and nice smells come in. So for instance, I had the smell of like a hospital sort of like environment, and sort of like a lot of like medicated sort of like hospitalized environment. But it was always when I went into this particular room, and actually what happened was the lady who was in that room, she passed away in that room, and she wasn't in hospital, but actually she was very ill, so she ended up having to have like a hospital bed and having nurses come in and things like that. So you may experience smells like that sometimes come through. I know some of my students have complained about really, really strange smells, like almost like odor type smells. And this could like indicate that possibly someone had poor hygiene. Obviously, you'd have to be very careful about how you word that, because you don't want to insult the person who you're giving the message to. But if it's someone who you knew who had poor hygiene, and you could be like, oh gosh, like, make a little bit of a joke about it if it's just for yourself. There's also things like, obviously, with animals, you may be able to smell animals. You may be able to smell, like, the particular type of shampoo that you washed your dog in, or you may be able to smell, particular types of animal smells as well. So there's loads of different types of smells which you can receive, and it's very, very interesting. So they ignite the rest of the clairs, which I will be teaching you how they ignite and how to realise and notice that and get those in when we do the clair aliens session and the techniques, okay? And that's a really interesting one. So please do make sure you look out for that one when it lands. So the next one is clairgustance, which is similar to clear smelling, and this is the ability of clear tasting. So again, this one is not as common as, say, like clairvoyance, but again, it's a really important one because it can work the same as the clear smelling, and it can ignite the other clairs to start coming alive. So for instance, again, you may get the smell of, say, like if someone used to chew tobacco, you may not smell, sorry, taste. Say like if someone used to chew tobacco, you may start to taste tobacco in your mouth. This is obviously more of an internal sensory that works within you. You may get the taste of like mints, you may get the taste of, for instance, possibly how someone passed. So an example of this, which isn't a nice example again, but because I'm a strong medium and I know my protection, I know that it's okay. So for instance, I was doing a reading for a lady once, and I suddenly got the taste of blood within my mouth, and it felt like my mouth was filling up with blood. So there is a sign for you already. The first one was I became aware of the taste of blood. I then became aware of the sensation of the feeling of it coming into, like, filling up in my mouth, which was the clairsentient, then it being ignited from the first original taste. Then from that, I then saw a flash of as if I was in a car and I crashed and I smashed my head, and that is how the blood started filling up. So that then ignited the clairvoyance, the clear seeing. So do you see how from that original taste I got clairsentient, then I got a visual, then I got clairsentient come in, because then I became aware. I didn't see him, so it was not my clairvoyance, clear seeing working, it was my clairsentient, because I sensed a male. I then sensed a younger male. Okay, but he was showing me the visual from his own mind, as if I was actually driving the car. So then from that, I was then able to continue the reading for this lady, and I was then able to discover who he was, his age, like his name, what happened, what time of day it was when he passed, and then that was creating a huge significance and a lot of trust for her, and also a lot of peace and clarity as well. And then I was then able to give messages after I received this really important form of significance. But how he chose to do it was he chose to bring in the clairgustance, clear tasting first, which, yes, is like, oh, but actually if I was ignoring that, I could have missed the whole amount. Now sometimes we do miss the ways they're trying to communicate, and they will keep on if they really want to get through, and they'll try and find a different way, but that is the way he chose. And because I was really aware of my body and my clair system working, I was able to get that my clairgustance was in play at that moment. So it's a very strong one, even though it doesn't come through as more commonly as some of the others. Another really interesting example that I'd just like to tell you, actually, whilst we're on the topic of this, is that actually I wasn't even working. I wasn't doing my readings on this particular day, but a lady bought something off of me and I went over to her home and I handed it over to her. I didn't go into her home. I just handed it over and she gave me the money and I got back in my car. As I was driving away, I started to feel really sick and I started to feel really like a headache. Just my whole body felt like it had changed. And I was aware that it was since I saw her. So I was already at the level where I knew this wasn't my energy and I was questioning why I suddenly felt so rough. So then from that, I then found that I started to take on some personality traits. And I started to become fearful in my car. I felt like I needed to race or like I was driving really fast, even though I wasn't really. I started to then have so that was more of like the emotional empathy traits coming in. I then started to have sickness and I felt like I was going to physically vomit whilst I was driving. But in the same sense, I was having in my mind, I need to go, I need to be really fast. Like I'm scared. It was a very fearful sort of like energy coming in. So if I wasn't, picking up on my reading my clairs properly, I would have pulled over and actually, tried to be sick or let myself be sick because the sickness was so strong. And that was the physical empathy started working there. So what I did was I said, this isn't mine. Who is here with me? I know it's someone to do with this lady that I just dropped this thing off for. Could you please tell me? Because I need this to be released off of me whilst I'm driving, because I felt very scared. Not scared as in scared of this spirit, but just actually scared driving. So then when I asked that question, I then saw a visual. So this is all whilst I was driving. I saw a visual of a lady. I saw her size. I saw her hair colour, everything. And so then it ignited my clairvoyance. So that clair empathy, feeling and emotional, can you see how it ignited the visuals to start to come in? And I saw her, and then I then was able to get that she was in a crash and that's how she passed, and that there was obviously some sort of race or something going on because she was like trying to get away. So another thing that was really interesting was it then kick-started after I sort of got this and I realized, right, I'm picking up this lady. She's realized I've got my light on, she can talk to me and try and get to her daughter, but I'd already left. So I then, after I got this information about her passing away through this crash, I then had my clair gustance kick in, which was my clear tasting. I also had my clair alience kick in, which is my clear smelling. So I smelt chip shop chips, like that really lovely like smell of when you walk past a shop and it just smells really yummy. And I smelt the chip shop chips, and then I could taste chip shop chips coming into my mouth. Then what it turned into is it turned into the taste of vomit. Okay, so obviously this wasn't a great experience for me just for going and dropping something off to someone. So it was a very, very strong connection, and it's a good example of a lot of my clairs being ignited very quickly. But what I'm trying to sort of say by using this example is that you can actually miss this and think that it's you, think that you're scared driving, think that you're going to be sick, think that you can actually taste vomit in your mouth and that you're going to be sick. So another thing that was very interesting with this particular one is when I got that smell of the chip shop chips, I got a really strong craving for chips to the point where I actually drove to a chip shop. Now, I knew this wasn't me, but it was almost like this lady was putting this upon me. And I actually was like, should I buy some chips? So I went in there and I bought some chips and I sat and ate them. And I actually sat there with her and ate them. And I gave her the chips I gave her the gift of me eating these chips for her. And then I said, right, what is your message for this lady? I don't normally do this because normally people come to me and they book a reading. I don't like to push my senses or anything like that onto other people, because I feel like it's important to let people approach you and it should be their choice. But this has come through so strongly, I feel like I need to give her a message for you. So she gave me the message, and it was all to do with her granddaughter, this lady's daughter, and that there'd been some issues and stuff going on there, and also to do with a little bit of some money problems. So I was like, right, okay, I'm going to give her the message, but you do need to leave now, okay, because you can't stay with me. Thank you for communicating with me, and if she does want to book in a reading later on, you're more than welcome to come back if it's the right time. So I did actually decide to message this lady. I said, I really hope you don't mind me messaging you, but this, and this. And I explained from start to finish everything that happened. And she was absolutely blown away. And she said, that's my mum. I knew it was her mum anyway. And she's like, that's my mum. I miss her so much. She passed away in a car crash because she was being chased by the police. And when they found her, she had puke all over her. And chips was her favourite meal, and she would get them every Friday. And then we looked, and it was a Friday that day. So I'm so glad that I was able to give her chips, her favourite chips, on a Friday. And I'm also so glad that I was able to give that lady a message from her mum. And also, when I said the other bits about the money problems and the grandchild, it was all correct as well. So she was absolutely blown away, and she got a little free reading then for free. But actually, she then ended up booking with me later on to connect to her mum, which I knew would happen because my psychic was sort of connecting. But I didn't do it to get her to book with me. I actually did it because this lady was so desperate to have a message, and she was obviously around her daughter so much, and her daughter was just so blocked and stuck within her life that she was just not being aware of her. So she saw someone who had their light switched on, because the thing is, a spirit, they know who psychic and who are not. It's not to say that we're not, because I say we're all spiritual beings, we all have the ability to be psychic, but they know who have got their lights more switched on than others, so they will hang around them. So this is one thing I would say. So if you are very spiritual or are very psychic or strong with your mediumship, then it is really important for you to understand your clairs in depth, because you will have a lot more activity, or you will have a lot more spirit trying to connect to you, because actually your light is very on, or it's a part of your journey to become a medium or a reader. Okay, but even as I say, even if you're not a reader, this would still be absolutely amazing to be able to help someone in that way. So this is why the clairgustance can be so strong, because again, like the clair aliens with the boy who crashed, it created a whole chunk of a story to be able to give forward, and also a hell of a lot of significance. So then again, these people can then trust in you, but you can also look back and be like, wow, I actually did that. I trust in my intuition. I trust in my clairs. Okay. So the eighth one, as I said, there's eight, so we've got nearly to the end now. The eighth clair is clairtangency. So this is the ability of clear touch, okay? Clear touching. So this is an interesting one. They do put it into the clairs, but actually it's an interesting one because it's just the ability of like touching something, touching someone, and being able to tell or understand what it is you feel. Okay, so it could be, so it's sort of, I put it at the end because it wraps a lot of the clairs in together, because you'll be able to feel, you'll be able to sense, that type of thing. So again, it's another one that kickstarts or ignites some of the more common clairs, like the feeling and the seeing. So a lot of people get this one mixed up with psychometry, okay, because psychometry is where you hold an object or you look at a photo and you start receiving, and this will be all your clairs that you are receiving, you start receiving the information through your clairs by holding an object of someone's or looking at a photo. So clairtangency is not psychometry, it's different. Clairtangency is the ability to just put your hand on someone's shoulder and actually just start picking up on what you feel, what you see, what you hear. So really, they've put it into the clair list, but for me personally, I think clairtangency is more of an element that gets you to the main 7 clairs. Does this make sense for you? Because it ignites all of the different types of clairs. So that is the list of the 8 clairs. Sorry, I'm getting all mixed up. The 8 main clairs, 7 are the main, and then you've got the 1 extra, which is the clairtangency. So from this particular list now, I would like you to have a really good think, if you haven't already, on what the clairs are for you that are working the most strongest within your energy stream, okay? Some of you may be very visual, some of you may hear more, some of you may get the strong smells or tastes, or some of you may be very empathic. And I'd like you to write down from the first to the bottom, okay? So put 8 numbers. And I would like you to write number 1, which is your strongest clair that you feel out of this list, your strongest clair, and then your second strongest, your third strongest, down to the 8th, which you feel is your least strongest clair. Okay, and the reason why I want you to write this down is because it will help you as a guideline to look back on for when you see that you have strengthened other clairs, okay? And then later down the line, we're going to do it again, and we're going to see which one you think is working more strongly for you after a few months, after doing a lot of the techniques. So please do write that down and keep that in a nice little notebook ready for you to go back and refer to. And then the second thing that I would like you to do is I would like you, with each of these clairs, obviously you don't have to do it with some of the least strongest, because you may feel that you don't even have that right now, okay? But I would definitely say with at least 2 of your strongest clairs that are working for you, I would like you to write down on a separate page your experiences, or something that this conversation has ignited for you and made you think, oh, so I was doing that clair then, and I remember it coming in, and I remember this and that and that. And I would actually like you to write these examples down for you, okay? And actually look within that example of when you write it, if there was these other clairs being ignited, see if you can search within that experience of these other clairs being ignited, and if you can actually detect how they're ignited. And the reason why we're doing this little task is because it's about getting you guys to start becoming so aware of how each clair is coming in for you. When did it come in? How did it work? So you may still not be 100% aware, but by writing down your example, you will actually be able to read that and see, like, well, I've said here that I saw this, and then I saw that, but then I felt strange, or I felt this. So from that, you'll be able to indicate, well, it started with the clairvoyance, but then I did start feeling like funny, or I did start feeling this sensation, or I did start feeling emotional when I saw that particular scene. So then you can then highlight that actually there was some other clair, it was kick-starting other clairs to come in. Does this make sense for you guys? So obviously, these tasks will be popped onto the Facebook group as well, okay, as reminders, and there will be hints and tips. And you guys are also welcome to pop them onto the Facebook group as well, so other people can actually see, because it'd be really good for other people to see and understand sort of what you're going through, because actually, when we engage with others, you know, we start to realize, wow, we're not crazy. You know, this stuff is actually just quite normal, really. And actually, I'm not alone. But 2, this conversation in itself will help you to understand that you're not crazy and you're not alone as well. So that's it for this particular video. Please do those two little tasks, because this is really going to help with your future learnings and your spiritual path. And it's really interesting to see, when you start changing it around, how you've developed and how you've strengthened each clair. And please do use this video, and as I said, I will also pop up the list as well for the written content for you to read back on. But please do use this video as a sounding board to go back to really understand. And also it will be repeated throughout the various different clair techniques and videos. So what I would like you to do is, I'd now like you to watch video 2, and this is going to be focusing on one of the clairs in more depth in particular. And there are also some tips, hints and techniques that I'm going to be leaving there for you to practice with. Okay, so make sure you do watch video 2, and I look forward to seeing what you all come up with on the group. And any questions, please do write them down and get them ready for our live questions and answers session. I'll see you over on video 2. Lots of love.